This is 1988 and your name is Joe Rogan. You moved to Boston at the age of 21 and started doing comedy shows around the area.
What's up? What's going on, huh?
You didn't make very much money, but you loved it. And at the age of 27, you finally cut your lucky break. You landed a development deal with Disney and appeared on TV shows like Hardball and NewsRadio.
It doesn't say here, Bill, but I believe it's a semi-invasive surgical procedure.
And 3 years later, you began hosting the UFC and Fear Factor. But this was only the beginning. In 2009, you started the Joe Rogan Experience that eventually made you the #1 podcast in the United States, netting you nearly $30 million in 2019. In 2020, Spotify came calling, and the two of you signed a $100 million contract.
Have an announcement. The podcast is moving to Spotify.
But as a fan who's watching from the sidelines, this news came as a shock. You didn't understand why Joe Rogan would jeopardize his already profitable platform. In this video, I want to talk about the logic behind the Spotify deal, explore the ambitious Spotify business model, and talk about whether or not you should buy Spotify stocks because of Joe Rogan. Spotify has paid about $70,000 for each one of Joe Rogan's podcasts. And why would they do that? To start off, Joe Rogan has reached the top of the podcast industry in 2019. He made double that of other top shows such as My Favorite Murder or The Dave Ramsey Show. And just alone on YouTube, his videos have accumulated over 6 billion views and over 13 million subscribers. And you can say that there's a couple reasons why Joe Rogan is so popular. To start off, you notice after a couple episodes that the show doesn't have any political agenda, and that's refreshing. He simply tries to relate to and understand the other person's argument. The podcast format is also more authentic than news shows. Instead of the typical TV timeline where guests have less than 30 minutes to talk, the conversation on a podcast can bounce back and forth, sometimes lasting over 5 hours. And in this format, viewers get to dive deeper into topics and the perspective of the person being interviewed. Lastly, the show hosts some of the most controversial guests on the internet. And whether you agree with their message or not, some of these media figures drive in millions of views for Joe Rogan. In fact, the top 3 viewed guests on the podcast include Elon Musk, Alex Jones, and Dan Bilzerian, who accumulated close to 100 million views for the channel. Basically, this podcast has become a safe and open place for interesting and controversial ideas, regardless of what those ideas are. The Joe Rogan Experience can best be described as a regular person like you and I who have normal conversation with scientists, CEOs, and internet personalities. And in these conversations, he questions and listens to their ideas, yet still connecting with these people at a human level. And this is what makes the show work.
I mean, I got a lot of offers to buy half of the podcast or to buy, and nothing. I won't do it. I'll never do it. But then Spotify came along and they said, we'll give you a licensing deal.
In 2020, Joe Rogan entered into a licensing deal with Spotify. As part of that deal, he must now remove his old content from YouTube by September of this year. He must also re-upload them onto Spotify's upcoming video platform. And from now on, he'll be exclusively producing podcasts for Spotify. To really understand why he signed the deal, we need to get in the head of Joe Rogan. Why sign a $100 million deal and jeopardize losing your audience with this move when you were already making $30 million per year? And the answer is actually surprisingly simple. Spotify is just the next logical step. As of 2020, you have already been on YouTube and iTunes for 10 years now. You question YouTube's censorship policy. You also want to push your career to the next level like everyone else, but you just didn't know how. And then came Spotify. They offer you a fresh podcast platform. They promise you the creative freedom that you wanted, and they also paid very well. With the Spotify deal, you lock in $100 million right now, while still making $25 to $50 per 1,000 downloads for your podcast. And you get to be one of the main faces on the app. Even if Spotify somehow fails, you can simply move back to YouTube. In fact, many have attempted to transition out of the YouTube ecosystem. And even when the transition fails, those who tried can move back anytime and still pocket the millions of dollars paid to move in the first place. But the question now is, can Spotify really compete with YouTube when so many other companies have tried and failed? And does streaming videos and podcasts even make sense? You might think of Spotify as a simple audio streaming platform, but it's so much more than that. The company went from just 18 million premium subscriptions in 2015 to about 130 million in 2020. To get a good understanding of how the company got here today, you need to put yourself in the shoes of the management team. As part of the management team, you have made some key changes over the years to get the company where it is today. You noticed early on that licensing music on your platform is not a lucrative business model, so you did something about it. You slowly renegotiated contracts with major music labels over time as your company gained more power and influence, and you cut down on the amount of money paid to independent artists. Reducing costs is the first step, but times are also changing. The music streaming business has been slowing down since 2015, and through some brainstorming, you stumble upon the growth of the podcast industry. So to get a really good idea of what the growth looks like, we can actually see that podcast has been increasing year over year, and monthly users actually has been increasing by a lot since 2009. And with podcasts, you don't deal with record labels, and you can even place more lucrative video ads before and during the programs themselves. In 2019, Spotify spent $400 million to set up the podcast infrastructure by purchasing Gimlet Media and Parcast. You also purchased Anchor, a podcast creation tool for new podcast creators. With all these purchases, Spotify basically has the same market share as Apple Podcasts, and that's really pretty amazing. And with this setup, Joe Rogan's just the next step. You needed stars on the platform, and Joe Rogan will take with him millions of his own followers to your platform, and either out of familiarity or enjoyment, many of these viewers will sign up for premium memberships, which drive 90% of your revenue, with the other 10% being ad support. Spotify is really in the business of trying to acquire premium users, and we can see that it's been consistently doing a good job at it. You can see that Spotify subscription has been growing year over year for a very long time, since 2015.
And its trajectory is to have 160 million listeners in just the next few years.
In fact, you didn't just want to stop with Joe Rogan. Your team acquired an exclusive Barack and Michelle Obama podcast in 2019. You signed a deal with Warner Brothers to produce a superhero podcast in 2020. Most recently, you landed a contract with Kim Kardashian West to cover her work with the Innocence Project. What we see here is for Spotify to continue to generate revenue for itself, it needs to continue to acquire premium users. And I think this is really at the heart of why it's acquiring all these different deals with Joe Rogan, the Obamas, Kardashians, etc. Basically, the music streaming business is slowing down. Podcast is a profitable older brother, so you doubled down on it. You created a reason for people to visit your website and apps. And through this process, you can potentially convert millions of new viewers into paying subscribers. Spotify is currently experimenting with video podcasts and music videos, and you can say that this change will forever transform the company into the next entertainment giant. In 2019, Spotify made $7 billion. The company controls the music streaming industry with 286 million active monthly users worldwide, which is close to the population of the United States. The upcoming video feature will also persuade more users to sign up, and in the future, visitors will be able to access podcasts, music videos, and more, directly competing with YouTube and other social media platforms. And Spotify even has some advantages too. They don't have the same content control policy as YouTube, and many racier content creators will likely migrate over. Exclusive music video premieres is also entirely possible. Think about it. With your new video feature, you can now do exclusive music videos and podcast videos. You can add educational and sport videos. And you can even build a platform that rivals TikTok, since you hold the licensing rights to millions of songs and albums. The possibilities are endless, and regardless of what actually happens, Spotify has a funding and platform to potentially force YouTube and other companies to really step up with their game. The question now is, should you invest into Spotify? To start off, the company does not generate a net income, and instead generates a net loss in 2019. But the business model itself is profitable, and it generates positive cash flow year after year. The company also does not rely on too much debt to operate, and it can pretty much secure more funding if needed. Spotify is a company that has more room to grow, especially since it can leverage its enormous music collection and introduce video streaming services. In terms of competition, Apple Podcasts and YouTube has yet to make any counter moves. The company also holds a competitive advantage by signing exclusive deals with stars like Joe Rogan. As of right now, the company is currently valued at $183 by 26 analysts, and the company is for sure a solid buy for investors and traders. And I'll make sure to update the intrinsic price in the descriptions below moving forward. The only thing I will say is avoid buying this company right after good news, but instead purchase a company whenever the stock is unfairly punished. Spotify is positioning itself as the next generation of media and entertainment. The company has the ability to become an entertainment package that rivals YouTube, TikTok, and Netflix. And the company is one of the few businesses out there that can actually compete against these social media giants. And it's really interesting to see what the company will do next. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to like or subscribe for more. And make sure to check out more company breakdowns in my playlist. Let me know what you guys think about the video and what videos I should do in the future in the comments below. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.